Good morning, everyone. It's a little after 8. We think there's a few members still who are going to come. I know the roads and weather have been less than ideal, so we'll get started and then certainly welcome them as they arrive. I'm going to dispense with the roll call. Phil and I have checked off those who are here, and we have a quorum, so we will proceed. We also welcome Supervisor Greg Telejohn to our group. Supervisor Telejohn, longtime resident in Richmond. He and I served together on the Richmond School Board a long time ago, so we have that professional connection. And the supervisor is chairman of the DHS board, and so is one of our voting members. So we welcome him to the body, and certainly likewise welcome his participation and insight. With that said, the minutes from the November 10 meeting were included as part of your packet. Are there any additions, corrections, or deletions to those minutes?
I was not present.
Thank you. We'll note you were not present. So noted. Anything else? Hearing none, they'll stand approved as submitted with that modest change. We have an opportunity this time for public comment. I know we have a number of people in the gallery. Is there anyone who would like to make public comment this morning? Any public comment? Public comment going 3 times. Thank you. Business items. Before we begin, I trust all of you saw we've begun construction here at the Government Center on the new addition. There are days we feel like we're in an earthquake with the literal shaking of the building. But we're really looking forward to that project, and it's getting out of the ground and its ultimate completion, and what it will enhance in terms of the delivery of services, not only to the public, but to those who are routinely and consistently involved and engaged in working in this building. So we again really appreciate the efforts of the county board. Many of those members are here today, and their leadership in getting that project literally and figuratively up and going. TAD grant update, Phil.
Thank you. So we are wrapping up our 2022 TAD grant. So Lisa, Kate, and I have met. Our end-of-year report is due at the end of January for 2022, and then we are into 2023, obviously, already, so we're just full steam ahead with that. I think I'll leave it at that, and I'll let Kate talk a little bit about our new addition in her treatment court update. Lisa, is there anything you want to add to TAD? Okay. Yeah, and Kate was going to talk a little bit about that. That's okay. And then you can add on at that point.
Go ahead.
Okay, thanks.
Any questions about TAD grant? Hearing none. Treatment court update. Phil, or Judge Waterman's going to start. And that's in place of Judge Nordstrand, who, as we speak, I think is sitting on a beach in the Grand Caymans or something, I was told. So I'm sure his heart and his spirit are here. And
Yeah. I just had to be synced first, yeah.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Judge Nordstrom asked me to deliver the remarks today. I can report on 2 changes in the treatment court. One has to do with track 2. That's the OWI track. I think Judge Nordstrand had mentioned before that legislative changes had resulted in mandatory prison sentences for certain OWI offenses, primarily 5s and 6s. And that was the target population for track 2, the OWI track. So that program continues to wind down and eventually will be discontinued because of an absence of people to participate. The other change is a recent one. It's my understanding that the Department of Health and Human Services had to make some difficult decisions regarding services that it was offering. I understand that largely had to do with staffing changes and available treatment professionals to provide services. The result was that the matrix program, the intensive outpatient program that treatment court participants are generally assigned to, is no longer available at the department. And the treatment court has been looking for alternative programs to refer treatment court people to for treatment. And I believe the court has made strides and maybe even committed to a partnership with Programs for Change, which is one of only a handful of programs in this county that deliver intensive outpatient services. I think Programs for Change is primarily delivered at the Hudson Hospital and also at Westfields in New Richmond. So maybe Dr. Gali or Kate can provide more details about their work.
Sure. So we met with Programs for Change. Along with their substance abuse assessment that they currently do, they also offer a psych evaluation immediately following that. That's huge for us. So while treatment court, our main goal is the substance abuse, we have found that the mental health sometimes is much greater. So having that immediately will really help us guide our participants into success instead of just focusing on their substance abuse first, and then after focusing on their mental health, well, that is when we see our participants start to crumble because they're bringing up past traumas, all of that kind of stuff. So to have all of those assessments immediately done, it's extremely helpful for us. I guess a few other treatment court updates that we have. We're also utilizing a contract that Behavioral Health has with peer sports specialists, Sophie and Dean, who are in the back. So we've made our first referral to them. They have started coming to treatment court. They're really just there as support members for our participants. If our participants can't come to us because we are looked at as authority figures to them, they have other people to go to. In the last month, we have had 3 graduations, so we are currently at a remaining 17 in our program. Right now, we're kind of on a hold with admissions until we can finalize some sort of contract or agreement to offer intensive outpatient. If we can't have anybody to, all of our participants are mostly in intensive outpatient treatment, and if we don't have that, we can't bring in new participants. So hopefully that will be finalized at the beginning of February. Our last update is that I have hired an intern from UW River Falls who will be starting in the end of January. So she will help kind of, I don't know how you state it, really just get us in order, help us get things together. A lot of what we're doing right now is kind of gathering resources, so she'll be extremely helpful in doing all of that.
If I could just real quick, and then actually I want to have Lisa talk about another hire that we made that's going to be shared between treatment court and diversion. But just to add on to what Judge Waterman had said, we have had a discussion with Programs for Change about entering into a contractual obligation for them to provide IOP for intensive outpatient programming for our treatment court folks. We haven't finalized that yet. The hope is that when Judge Nordstrand gets back, they're going to come and observe court and meet with us face to face. But our intention is to move forward with either Programs for Change or someone else. I think the biggest component is some funding challenges. So our folks, a lot of them do have maybe Badger Care or some other public service insurance, but that may not cover the full price of treatment. And so we're working with the Department of Corrections to see if we can enter into an agreement with them and Programs for Change to kind of fill that void. So if this is what insurance costs and this is what their, if this is what treatment costs, this is what their insurance will pay, that gap there could be pretty significant for our folks. And it's possible that, and I know the Department of Corrections isn't here today, but that they will help us fill that void. So we'll have a better update in March.
And also, I made a very broad characterization about what's happening at the department. Maybe, Bob, can you fill in? And I want to give you the opportunity to speak to the issue.
Sure. Thank you, Judge. Yeah, obviously, we do have a staffing issue at the moment with the department in that area, and we're having to rely on our community partners to assist us with treatment options. I believe Programs for Change does offer financial assistance to people without insurance or who don't qualify for insurance. We're actively recruiting for open positions. It's difficult, obviously, in this environment to find qualified people with the proper credentials to do this work. But we're we're actively interviewing and seeking employees to fill those vacancies. The interruption in services, or the temporary reduction in the services that we're offering, is obvious. It's related to the staffing needs that we have. So once we are back up and running with our staff, we can start to ramp back up with our direct care options. I believe the matrix model is being provided, but not in true fidelity with the design. We're patching together some additional groups to still provide that matrix program pretty much with it's close to the intention of what it was designed to do. But again, we're trying to, in the meantime, reduce our wait list, attend to the people that we're currently serving, and try and give them the quality care that they deserve, reduce the wait list. Demand continues to increase, so we're fighting a few different fronts there. But I appreciate the concern. I appreciate the, especially with the opioid epidemic raging and methamphetamine still, and alcohol, of course, primary concerns for people. I appreciate the concern around this. We're actively doing everything we can to address it.
And I would just one last thing, I think, or maybe two things, actually. So this is not us as a treatment court, like, ending our relationship with Health and Human Services. I just want to make that clear. I don't think, hopefully nobody assumed that, but it's just so we can continue to move forward as a treatment court. Kate said our numbers are right about 16 or 17 right now, which is great, but we'd like to continue to admit people. So the pause that we currently have is temporary. As Kate had alluded to, hopefully in the next 2 weeks, we'll be able to open that back up and get more folks back into the queue and get them screened and get them active. Because we, as Bob had said, we do know that there's a need for justice-involved persons to seek treatment. And then, Elisa, if you want to talk a little bit about our new hire.
So with the 2023 TAG grant, we were awarded an additional $35,000 some for a project data entry specialist. That position will be 25 hours per week to be split between the diversion program and the treatment court. It is an essential position that is much needed because both programs operate with a coordinator, and each coordinator does work with the clients, as well as having a case manager. The diversion program also has a part-time case manager, and both programs are programs that really need that client contact and assistance with each individual. And with the TAG grant, we spend a lot of time entering data into the core reporting system, which is the system that DOJ uses to collect all of our data to determine how successful and how well we're doing. So with that, we are going to utilize this position to be able to use that system, put all of our information in there. With the treatment court, everything goes into that system. Their UA testing, the treatment sessions, client contacts. With diversion, it's very similar. So that position will be doing all of that type of work, plus just providing assistance to both programs. It will be 12 hours per week with diversion, 12 hours per week with treatment court, and then an additional hour will go to the CJCC in providing assistance with things for Phil. Did I summarize that okay?
Oh, just that we did hire someone.
Yes, so we did hire someone.
And she starts on the 23rd, so she won't have a lot of forward-facing client contact, or very little, but you'll likely see her in treatment court and diversion, just to kind of provide some context to what she's doing. She'll be, again, as Lisa had said, largely doing data entry behind the scenes, but we want to make sure, because she does not have much of a justice background, which is fine, that she understands kind of what we're doing here.
And her name's Tara.
Yeah.
Judge Waterman, anything else? No. Thank you. Just a couple of follow-ups. As Phil said, Right now, Department of Corrections does provide a fair amount of money to the department to help with treatment court, and primarily those folks who are on probation, which all of them are in some form in treatment court. And so we think, as we said, to help fill that gap, there may be some available dollars that the Department of Corrections was funneling through the county that now may be available through these private providers. And then secondly, the staffing concerns and issues and challenges at the department, have a ripple effect on everything else that we do in the justice system. For anyone who's convicted of an operating while intoxicated or a drug-related offense, we order assessments. Those are being done timely, and we really appreciate the efforts that the department has made, because we at one time had a pretty significant gap between ordering an assessment and getting it done. However, where we're finding now the gap to really be expanding is in the delivery of treatment. We're at about 9 months between being assessed and someone getting into treatment. And so that impacts, if you put someone on probation for 2 years and for the first 9 months they're not getting treatment, it has, again, that potential ripple throughout the system. So we really support the department's efforts to fill those positions, and we'll do anything we can, obviously, to support and assist that. Any other questions or comments about what's happening in treatment court? Thank you. Justice Support Staffing Update. Phil.
Just one quick update. We have a new pretrial case manager, Courtney Drake, who's sitting here at the table. She started with us on the 3rd last week, right? Yep. So she has about a week and a half in the department now. She knows everything. She's ready to go. She joins us from behavioral health, so she's doing a great job. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, Bob.
Yeah. And we'll end on that note.
Did you tell her she had to give a 10-minute introductory
I did.
speech?
Yeah, I did.
Well, welcome, and you're with a great department, and with Shelby and Phil and Kate and everyone else support, we look forward to your success as well. Any questions about staffing? Justice Support Behavioral Health Staffing Collaboration, Phil.
Sure, I'll fill in what I can here, and maybe Bob can fill in. So one of the ARPA-funded case manager positions is positioned here at the Government Center. It's been vacant for a couple months now. We did interviews. Let me take a step back. So this position will be kind of co-supervised between behavioral health and justice services. The position is, again, staged here in the Government Center, in court during intake. And so because of that, our department will partially supervise on-site this position. So we did interviews, and I'm not quite sure, because I know Shar had vacation, if we've moved forward with the hire there, but it probably in the next 3 or 4 weeks someone will be starting.
Phil, in that position, I'm not sure. I know we hired a new co-responder,
Okay.
but I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that.
That's okay, and I can provide a further update. I just don't want to overstep, because I'm not technically the supervisor of record, so I'll just be doing our department will be doing the on-site supervision. But we look forward to that position starting, again, I would say early February, if I had to guess. So this position largely assists in the courtrooms, early intervention, prevention, someone who is really struggling, needs services, and pointing them kind of in the right direction. So this position, again, ARPA funded through the end of 2024, and I'll provide a further update in March.
Any questions about that position? Thank you. MRT update. MRT, again, to remind everyone, is moral recognition therapy. It's a cognitively based, help people think in a way other than in a criminal mindset. And Phil's going to give us the update of where we're at.
Sure. We were slated to start last Wednesday, the 4th, but the snow knocked us out. We were going to go this week. We had an illness in one of our facilitators. So next Wednesday, the 18th, hopefully, fingers crossed, will be our first night. We do have 6 folks, I believe, that are registered, and then another 2 or 3 that the Department of Corrections has referred to us. So we've got about 8 or 9 people that are ready to go, which is really great. We have been kind of waiting for our numbers to get there and those referrals from the Department of Corrections. So again, further update in March.
Questions about MRT? APPR, Learning Site Update, Phil.
Sure. So this is our project that Shelby and I have taken on with Advancing Pretrial Policy and Research, which is a government think tank. It's a 1 to 2 year partnership. So Shelby and I met with them back in December, and then this Monday with our pretrial work group with Judge Waterman, Carl Anderson, and Travis Sartorius, we have a work group, the 3 of them, and Shelby and I meet monthly, and we talk about pretrial barriers and moving forward. So they joined us virtually, and they're going to be working kind of behind the scenes. Shelby is really the lead on this project, but at certain points I'll likely be asking others to join in and have conversations with those folks as they make recommendations for us specific to pretrial.
Anything about that initiative? A lot going on. We're going to switch up the agenda a little bit. We want to be respectful of Chief Atkinson's time, who's Chief of Police at Menominee Police Department. No stranger to this area, as he was an officer with Hudson Police Department for a number of years and appeared regularly, I think, in all of our courtrooms, so we certainly welcome him back in his new capacity as Chief of Menominee. And Menominee has started a rather innovative, forward-thinking program called Project Hope, and the Chief is going to kind of tell us what's happening in Menominee, and we'll go from there. Chief.
Absolutely. Thank you, Your Honor, and I appreciate you adjusting the time and moving me up in the agenda. So I want to be brief and cognizant of everybody's time. So we have started a program about 2.5, almost 3 years ago now, called Project Hope, that was really geared towards trying to interrupt the cycle of substance use disorders, in particular with methamphetamine, and also with the opioids that have leaked into our community, and much like what is happening here in St. Croix County and Hudson. And so what we did is we began with what was called phase 1 of the Project Hope, and we were looking at trying to work with children in our community, because we figured if we were going to try to break up this cycle of substance use, we would have to start with the children. Now, the part I'm going to really focus in on here today is something that we call the Juvenile Review Team. And the Juvenile Review Team is a partnership between Human Services, the Menominee Police Department, and then the School District of Menominee. The team is made up of school resource officers, school counselors, school psychologists, as well as social workers from Human Services. They convene every 2 weeks to discuss issues that may be taking place in the schools or with juveniles in the community. They are looking at kids that are either one, maybe referred through Handle with Care. I'm sure most of you are probably familiar with that. The other part is if teachers or community members or any member of this team hears about a child's behavior that has started to change, maybe indicative of a child that has an adverse childhood experience, maybe all of a sudden they're becoming lethargic, they're acting out in school, but they're not engaging in what we would consider criminal behavior. If they identify these children, they develop a plan to be able to essentially do an intervention with the child. So they'll determine who is the most appropriate person to make contact with the child, interview the child, find out what is happening in their life. If they find that there may be some kind of gaps, maybe there's a lack of housing, there might be a food scarcity issue, we might have a drug-endangered child, we may have physical, sexual, emotional abuse taking place, or it could be just a lack of supervision. Maybe they're not getting to school, and I think one of the other sad things we have found too is because parents are having to work, or there may be other issues with the parents, the children are becoming essentially the parents for their siblings. So they're now having to act as adults and take care of the kids, and so there may be gaps in that area. Well, what the team then does is they'll work with the parent or guardian once they find out what is happening, and then allocate or provide resources to the family and to the children that's most appropriate. It may be counseling, it could be family counseling, it could be mentoring for the juvenile, it could be connecting with food, shelter, any number of types of resources, essentially creating a wraparound support system for that child. Now, the purpose of this, not just to be a good person and help out children and families, but we're trying to get and work with the children to help them avoid going down a path that might lead to delinquency and then addiction and then causing other issues in the community. Bless you. And so we found that that has been very successful, and most parents and most families have been absolutely welcoming of the assistance, especially once you explain it's a partnership, we're not forcing ourselves on you. You can utilize this as much as possible or as little as possible. The mentoring program of that has been absolutely phenomenal as for how many children that we have in it. It was something that I did not anticipate in funding, that would be as popular as it was, but it's been astronomical. And we have peer support specialists, which come from the Milkweed Alliance, would have been great with our children that have adverse childhood experiences. We utilize another group called Mentor Chippewa. We call them Mentor Menominee. They're based out of the Chippewa Falls School District. And we also utilize this is a little bit different kind of group. They're called We Adapt, but they're based out of, I shouldn't say they're based out of Eau Claire, but the people that work at We Adapt, a good majority of them, work at a CrossFit facility. And with a lot of our high school students have been going to that. These are kids that are more troubled, that are in the upper teens. And we found that they started going to school. They're not truant. They're starting to pass classes, and their behavior has been changed. So we've had great success. Now the other part of it is we do diversion. And what we want to do is, yes, we've had diversion through our district attorney's office, pre-charge diversion, and other similar programs, much like what I'm sure you experience here. We want to have this be an officer-led type diversion. So if we have a juvenile that has committed an offense or something that we would write a ticket to, what we're doing is if that child is assessed at medium or low risk, we offer a diversion program for them. And the diversion program might be if let's say addiction is the real issue, we'll provide treatment for that child, we'll provide counseling for that child. If that's neither the option or that's most appropriate, we have an education-based program that's online where the students then can go online, they watch a video or education training. It's provided by Advent FS. It's an evidence-based educational system. They take tests or questions throughout the program, and we've had folks that have been challenged, that intellectually challenged, and still are able to complete the program because that was a concern of ours. They've completed it, and we've had tremendous success when it comes to the completion and the fact that they have not come back or recidivated in their crimes or their juvenile offenses. So what does all that translate to? Prior to doing any of these programs, we were referring about 200 children a year for crimes to our human services and to the juvenile court system. Since we've been doing this over the last 2.5, almost 3 years, we've reduced that by 75%. And we've seen nearly a 90% completion rate on our diversion, and we've seen our truancy go down significantly, both through, I believe, wholeheartedly through those deflection, those early intervention initiatives that are being accomplished, as well as through the diversion program. And we know, I think we're all on the same page here, that if we can help avoid people being impacted by the justice system, that reduces stigma. We're also able to get them to the proper resources they need to help readjust or make better decisions in their lives. So I wanted to at least share this program with you because I think truly it is a low-hanging type fruit. It's a way to be able to work with our younger population to help them grow into responsible adults and citizens, and also find out if we have challenges at home and then be able to get those people resources. Any questions about that particular initiative?
What's your target population, Chief? Are this middle school, high school, elementary?
All of it, K through 12. Everybody is eligible for it. Obviously, we'll adjust a little bit depending upon the age of the juvenile. And I mentioned we're with the school district in Menominee area, but we've also brought in other students or other juveniles from other areas that may not have resources. So your Boycevilles, your Colfax, your Elk Mound, because they may not necessarily have those resources. And we don't want to be in a position where we're turning down children or a family that needs it. And we've done that by acquiring like therapy. We've had some students that have come forward that that have talked about some pretty significant issues, and they maybe had one parent that was in support of seeking therapy or counseling, the other parent, not so much. And so if a bill would come in the mail, it was going to be a very big problem at home. So we've absorbed some of those costs and helped those juveniles continue to receive therapy or start therapy until time that they can their family either wraps around with it, or they get to the age where then they can bring it on through Badger Care or something else or something similar.
Yes.
Eric, or Chief, sorry.
You can call me Eric. We've known each other for a very long time.
So what is your hope in trying to move this forward and presenting to us? It sounds similar to our CASA initiative, but how would a local municipality get information, or what are you looking to share and move forward with this?
All right, so if we're asking what is my real agenda, so the real agenda here is a couple fold. One, to share programs that have been shown to be either effective or promising or evidence-based, which I'm hoping that you'll take this into consideration. The other part is too, there's going to be significant monies that are available either through COSUP grants, opioid funding that's coming in, through other programs through SAMHSA and NIMS. And since we share a lot of the same populations, our populations, yes, they're transient, but they're moving between our counties, they're moving between our communities, and we're sharing some of the same issues. People have the substance use disorders, they have mental health disorders, they have co-occurring disorders. My ultimate goal is that we can do very similar things amongst each other, share information, apply for grants and other resources, so that way we can bring them in and really engage in a collaborative effort to address some of the most critical needs in our communities. So really that's what the ultimate ask is, and I just sent Dr. Gali a message too about a group that's been meeting and will convene again next month, which will talk about officer-led diversion deflection programs, as well as creating pathways to treatment and counseling that we're starting in the state. And then the hope is to also influence Madison to provide more support in these programs like treatment alternatives, provide substance use disorder treatment, help fund programs for children to get out of these situations that they're in. So that is really what the ultimate goal is. So if you're seeing that, it's not to necessarily promote like what we're doing in particular, but to create a regional and then hopefully at some point statewide partnership and buy-in. To me, this is really a bipartisan issue that we can, or excuse me, this is not something that's going to be politically motivated on one side or another. This is something that impacts all of us. And I truly believe that we could find our governor and legislators getting behind this if we can show that we can work together as a community and as a state and address these issues. I think there's a lot of power in that.
I would love more information for the city's municipality, if you could get that to us.
Absolutely. I'm at your service.
Yes.
I'm familiar with a program called Project Hope. You mentioned adverse childhood experiences, and my understanding of this Project Hope is that it's about the difference you can make for people who have had adverse the difference you can make for the people who have had the adverse childhood experiences and actually have positive experiences. So I'm curious, is this related? Did you name it Project Hope, or are you following? I'm wondering if it's the same model that I'm just becoming familiar with.
It's a different one. We named it Project Hope. This was part of a city initiative of it. But I know of what you're speaking of too, because there are a few programs called Project Hope that are around the country. Here. So we will work with both children that have adverse childhood experiences, and then we also work with children that haven't had the childhood experience. And we have, our Project Hope follows 4 strategic pillars to work with juveniles and adults, utilizing prevention, treatment, harm reduction, and then enforcement. But enforcement is more tailored towards diversion and getting you away from being impacted by the system. So there are a great many components to it. I'm highlighting this one because otherwise I'd talk all day. Those of you who know me or testified in court and know I will talk forever. So like I said, I want to be respectful of everybody's time.
So I'm curious as to the department's involvement, because at least in St. Croix, our workers are stretched already with just court referrals and what they're doing. So this appears to be more of a kind of a triaging by the school district, who identifies kids who they think might need services. So I'm just curious, you know, how staff-wise and resource-wise, you know, you're making that happen.
You're not wrong. We're all stretched thin. I can't disagree with you. Where our thought was, if law enforcement, which I think really to show that you're effective is to show that there isn't crime, we're here to prevent it, not necessarily to react to it. If the law enforcement can lead it up front with the children, that can take the stress off of our human services, and that can take the stress off of the school district or counselors or these other services that are ancillary. So that's why I like to highlight the success of reducing those referrals, because I know because they are stretched so thin and lacking resources themselves, it's hard for them to focus on those kids that really are the super high risk, super high needs, very at-risk children. We're taking away those low to medium risk kids that might benefit from something else. And then they can dedicate those resources to those kids and those families that frankly just really need their help and they need their expertise. Program's not for everybody. If you're a person who has high criminogenic needs, so you're in that upper tier with sociopathic behavior, this won't work for you. But for those lower tier, those lower 4 criminogenic needs, this program works well. And the other initiatives inside of it do as well.
Chief.
So Chief Atkinson came and spoke with the St. Croix County Chiefs group last month. I think it was well received, but I think there's some questions that are coming out that were similar to our questions on. In Dunn County, Menominee is the largest community and basically the only large community, and so he has kind of a monolithic look at it, and we have all of these smaller agencies with smaller heads and interest and whatnot. So it was a challenge that we recognize that if we are going to bring this type of program in, we're going to have to figure out a different way to do it on a kind of a multi-tiered situation. But you know, he's only spoken to the first tier. There's all kinds of other pieces to this puzzle, and so I think it's going to take a group, and that's why I handed it over to Phil, because I didn't think that I was going to be able to start pushing that, but I think this program is definitely one that, I mean, if you hear 200 kids being referred to Health and Human Services down to, I don't know what 70% of 200 is off the top of my head, I think that's a huge reduction in the amount of resources that are moving out and will take some pressure off of some of the juvenile justice system, but that's only the first piece. I think there's a lot of adult pieces that come with it that this county could definitely get help for, but it's going to take the right group and the right people to be able to push it forward, because we are a different model, although I think we can definitely use the template that he's provided.
I think shared revenues is a big topic, and it comes down to money as well. And if you can get legislation behind you, I mean, your community is a little different with the college there. You get a bigger part of the shared revenues. So money, you not only as staff stretched short, it's the money. There is none. Let's be honest, and that's what we would have to look into too through the legislation.
I do think that certainly is going to be key, because if we show that there is a need and that communities are able to work together, we will see legislative support and then support from the executive branch as well. And as far as money, yes, we get a decent revenue because of our university sits in prime real estate area. But aside from that, we are an impoverished county. We are at about 16-17% countywide, and as far as the city goes, because of the students and the census that's in there, our poverty rate is near 21%, so it's significantly higher, and our property tax value is low. And shared revenues impact, of course, in the way our state does our levy system and taxes, it's impactful. As far as other funding opportunities, I've received funding through the U.S. Department of Justice, Bureau of Justice Assistance, from a COSIP grant, and it was in the tune of just shy of $600,000. plus another $150,000 from Human Services and a cooperative grant that we applied for, and then some grants from private sectors. One of the most significant ones came from the Mayo Clinic Health System, which was $20,000. And I share this with you because this is money that could be also available to you, and if we also look at doing a combined effort, and to address what Chief Richard is talking about, because every community is a little bit different, resources a little bit different, those pools of money go up significantly on those federal grant applications to the tunes of well over $1 million. And we could start looking at ways that we could either share resources with Dunn County or Menominee Police Department with St. Croix County and vice versa. We've already been helping some people over in Pierce County. There are some ways to be able to provide some resources. We get creative with it. But I do think there's that possibility, and I do truly appreciate what struggles the St. Croix County goes through, City Hudson, along with the other villages and cities in the county, especially from working and living here for so many years before moving to Menominee.
Thank you. Any other questions? My thoughts is to, at executive committee level, to probably establish some type of work group, or those who are interested to follow up and pursue and see if this is something that we might want to tackle in collaboration with Menominee or otherwise. So, Chief, we really appreciate your time today, and I'm sure we'll see you again.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor,
Thank you.
and thank you, everybody, for giving me your time. It's a gift. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So if anyone here or any of our public members, non-voting, are interested in being on a work group, certainly let Phil know or me know, and we will probably at least explore that and hopefully develop that before the next council meeting. Next is review of the membership discussion. I know that Phil and Kate Avalos and maybe others have been working on this, and Phil, what's your report?
Sure. So in the last, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 months, a couple entities have come to me either through email or in person and asked about membership in the CJCC, whether it's on this body or as part of some of our subcommittees. So this prompted me to talk with Kate Avalos, and we, back in November, got together and looked at our bylaws, the language for our bylaws, to refresh a little bit. It needed some updating. And then also understand, what do our bylaws allow for? And then last Thursday at our executive committee, we met and we got a little bit more clarity on our bylaws. And so I think a couple things. Do we want to add membership, I guess? And when I say membership, as far as I understand it, the 19 voting members, that is dictated by county board. And so I don't know that there's maybe a lot of change that we're looking for there. But as our advisory member, so really the rest of us that are here, are there folks that aren't here that we would like to add? Folks from maybe child support or CASA, or an area that I've been thinking a little bit more about, community members. Are there other community members? The community members that we have are excellent and we appreciate you, but are there other folks in the community that are interested in tuning in? I do know a colleague of mine that lives in Hudson. I say colleague, he works in probation over in Ramsey County, but lives here in Hudson, is interested in maybe being an advisory member. And so it just got me thinking a little bit about that. So leads me to this. As we meet here, and we'll give the dates of the subcommittees here in the next month or two, but as we're part of our subcommittees, maybe talk in those small groups. Are there folks, advisory members, that we would like to bring on board? But I would also open it up if there are thoughts right now in the large group.
Don't everyone speak at once. An area that, as you are talking, Phil, comes to mind for me. I mean, you mentioned child support, you mentioned CASA, you mentioned a couple of other things, which are all child-centered. We really don't have a subcommittee that looks at child-centered issues in the county. And Project Hope may be, an adjunct of what ultimately would come out of a subcommittee like that. So I think, for me, looking at our current subcommittees and deciding, is there another one that we might want to explore or develop that maybe deals with an area that we're not currently serving or addressing. So that's one that came to mind for me, but anyone have any other thoughts? So I think Phil's idea of each subcommittee looking at who your current members are, are there those that you maybe would like to invite to either participate at that level or recommend to serve as advisory to this body? I think Phil's correct. The resolution that was approved by the county board established certain parameters, but we certainly could explore that too with Corp Council if we want to look at adding additional voting members. And then, as I said, the other thing is if you have other ideas about areas that we're not addressing or that maybe we could in some way support through either our existing committees or through another subcommittee, let me know, let Phil know, and by the next meeting, I think in March, we may come back then with a formal proposal. Any other thoughts or comments? Phil, your presentation.
My administrative tasks are really struggling today. So everyone whose microphones didn't work, that's because I didn't sync them. So that's the blame is here. I usually have someone helping, and it didn't work today. So, okay. One of the things that I've been looking at, and this is difficult to see, so I'll blow this up a little bit and we can go from there. Doing is just to kind of sync up some of our justice system involvement here. So I emailed a lot of folks and have talked with a lot of folks about some data points. And this looks probably really abstract, and it's a bit of an academic idea, but the idea here is to look at our justice system through a funneling method. So at the top there, you can see we have emergency support calls for services. So this, I want to make clear, this is not all criminal behavior. This is just any call that goes through our call center there. So that's typically where we start with this. So you can see that from, and again, you can see that note there at the top, from January 1st of 22 to December 1st of 22. That's the time frame that we're really looking at here. Roughly 23,000 calls came in. So again, the idea is that only a percentage of those are actually related to suspected criminal behavior. But I think that's a good starting point for us. And actually, if we want to get really academic here, there's a level above that, which is called the dark figure of crime, which is unknown to us. Things that go unreported, underreported, but that is a very, very abstract idea. That's really, really hard to get an idea on. So we'll start with emergency calls for service. But the idea is as cases work their way through the justice system, it becomes narrow, a little bit more narrow, and we funnel our way through. So if we drop down to that next kind of box there, I looked at arrests for both felony and misdemeanor behavior. Some of the departments here in the county are still getting back to me, so this is also it's not a completed product. It's kind of a working document here, but roughly 1,000, in excess of 1,000 arrests took place in the county over 11 months last year. Again, that number will absolutely increase when we get a more complete picture. From there, I looked at jail bookings, again, roughly 2,500. Kathy, as part of something else we were working on for the MAT grant, we looked at the number of people that were actually booked into jail more than 3 times, and I think that number was 460, give or take. So a large percentage of our bookings come from probably 20% of our folks. That's pretty telling right there. That was an idea that we got from one of our MAT grants, right? Yeah. Yeah, it was from Chief Atkinson is the one that shared that with us. So that next rung down, how many of those bookings, again, this is not necessarily clean. There could be other kind of rungs to this ladder here. Referrals to prosecution, so those cases that come to Carl's office. From there, how many criminal charges, both felony and misdemeanor, were charged. Again, we drop down, we continue, you can obviously see here, it's very, very clear, hopefully, that we lose cases as we go through. Findings of guilt, from those criminal charges, we lose even more cases there. I can scroll down. From there, what I call alternatives to incarceration, so essentially probation cases. I would note that the data that I have, that I got from DOC, that actually includes part of 2021. So again, a little bit of an apples to oranges comparison there. It's not as clean as we would like, but it still gives us an idea. And then that bottom rung is folks that are sentenced to prison. Again, those are 2021 numbers, but it gives us an idea. So again, as we move through the system, cases right? People, the general idea is not every call for service, not every crime reported ends up with someone going to prison. That's not even close to the case. And actually, if you look down there at my notes, the last note talks about this idea of the 1% rule. So generally speaking, again, this is pretty theoretical, but 1% of all crimes reported actually end up with someone in prison. That's generally speaking. Here we have a much less number than that. I think when I looked at this, is like 0.7% of the cases in St. Croix County. But again, it's not that easy because we know that not all of those calls for service were actually crimes. So I think, and I'll kind of recap in a second, but for me, and I think getting this information out to the public as much as possible, I think oftentimes there's some misinformation in general society that all of the crimes that are reported end up with people going to prison. That's just not the case. It's a very, very small number, as we can see here. As we move through and we can ask questions, and a lot of the folks at the table probably have a better idea about this, but we lose cases for a number of reasons, right? People don't report cases, they underreport because of fear, retaliation, shame, embarrassment. So again, start to think about some of the reasons why cases drop off. If we look over on the right-hand side, and I added these 4 boxes, the number of victim witnesses and victims that were served in the county, that's certainly part of our system. In pretrial, we served nearly 300 folks. Lisa's team in pre and post-charge diversion, just over 100, and then treatment court, right around 30. So some of these would actually fit into that idea of alternatives to incarceration, so diversion cases and adult treatment court would. I also realized that we're probably missing some folks. Probably need to get with Christy and talk with her a little bit about how her department, where they would fall here. The medical examiner, you know, how many folks does she work with on a yearly basis that are justice involved, that overdose and die, or otherwise? When we start talking about that. So this is not complete, but just something I'd like to continue to update as we move forward into 2023. And there may be better ways of actually mapping this. It makes sense to me, but I think it gives us a picture of how folks work their way through the criminal justice system. Any questions? Judge.
Actually, 2 questions. Your prison figure, you're using the term prison in the strictest sense of the word, somebody who's sentenced to more than 1 year
Correct.
Incarceration?
Correct.
So that does not include people who are sentenced to the jail?
Correct.
All right.
Yep. Those are DOC numbers. The Department of Corrections gave me that information.
And then do you see anything noteworthy about these numbers? Anything that kind of stands out, is abnormal or is significant to you?
Not necessarily. I would say something that really jumped out to me was the number of victims and witnesses that were served. That's pretty substantial in a good way. I mean, that means that people, so I make note that people maybe don't report or underreport because of fear, retaliation, shame, and embarrassment. That's true, but that's again what I'm saying, but then we see here that there are people that are coming forward that are receiving those services. So in a positive way, I would say that is a big takeaway for me.
Do you know, Phil, if the findings of guilt include those who would be on a deferred, in other words, someone who comes in and pleads, but we don't actually find them guilty, but we put them on an alternative? Is that number included in that, or is that outside of that, if you know?
I do not know.
Because, again, for the benefit of the body, there are a fair number of cases that we put in what's called deferred judgment of conviction status, where they come in, they plead, we find them guilty, but we don't convict them. We put them into a program administered by the DA and Lisa's office, where they're monitored not by probation, but by the district attorney. If they're successful, that plea is vacated and the case is dismissed. If they're not successful, they come back in, we actually then convict them, and then go to a formal sentencing. So if it's findings of guilt without that component, I'm guessing there are probably a fair number, and Christy, you probably have the ability to extract that out. How many people are in that status, and I'm guessing it's a fair number. Chief, you had a question?
Please.
Did you need to respond to that?
Oh, I was just going to say, it would be important to flesh that out. Yeah.
So I don't definitely want to give myself any more work because I have not reported to you yet.
That's okay.
But I'm thinking of municipal court because you're kind of looking at the emergency services calls, which could be anything from somebody calling in to report that they're going to burn, they need a burning permit. So non-criminal, there's all those types of calls that come from that. But also in the fact that some of those calls that could be criminal, but maybe the agency decides to move forward in an ordinance or a municipal court charge instead of a criminal court charge might be another factor that's going to, I don't want to say even out the numbers, but explain away some of those gaps.
Yeah. Yeah, these are very loaded numbers here. It's just very surface. So more digging is definitely necessary to find out really what this means. Kind of a starting point, I guess, for at least me. Yeah.
Who are the calls going, when you say emergencies at 911 or what are the sources, who are they calling?
Yeah,
What's in
that would be my guess. Is that right, Brent? They go through dispatch?
that's the channel?
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, and I just want to say, I really like the funnel illustration, because every rung on that funnel is another department within the county. And every time you drop to that rung, I can see the cash register ring up for the county. But that's where it's important that if you can eliminate somebody from this process, especially someone that's dropping all the way through the process, if we can catch them sooner and remove them from the cycle, that saves the county a lot of resources, and that gives us a goal then of where to intervene to help reduce those costs and have the biggest benefit for the individual and the county.
That's right, and some of what Chief Atkinson was talking about speaks to that would be up at the top of the funnel there, whether it's a deflection program in law enforcement or it's intervention that we can reach. He was particularly talking about kids, but before they enter the system, that would be ideal. So, what does that look like? What do those services look like up there?
And I think unique within the criminal charges filed category, our felonies are increasing pretty significantly, which are the serious crimes, anything that would involve a potential prison sentence, which means in excess of 1 year jeopardy. So, again, within the criminal charges filed, the number for felonies has gone up significantly in the last couple of years. Misdemeanors, I think, have stayed a little more level relative. So the time necessary to process felonies is much greater than the time necessary to process misdemeanors, and the outcomes are certainly much different for a felony level offense. Supervisor.
What's SCSO stand for?
St. Croix County Sheriff's Office.
Okay, where's Hudson?
I haven't received back from that.
Okay, are you looking for input from all the municipalities?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I was lucky enough to go to the Chiefs meeting. Chief Richard brought Kathy and I along, and Chief Atkinson was there, so I made a contact with them, and so just waiting to hear back from those folks.
And I guess speaking to that, we received the request late December.
Yeah.
There were a number of us that were off throughout the holidays, and so and the other thing is it's not necessarily an easy, I do hear from Hudson, I talked to their admin assistant this week, and trying to find a report that would parse out those particular numbers, and it's, our system will work it, it's just a matter of getting it done. So those, they should be coming, it's just some time.
No, and it's a big ask on my end, so I appreciate everyone's involvement. It's, like I said, I view this as an ongoing project. It's kind of why I just called it a snapshot. Here we are today, early 2023, but what does this look like moving forward?
And to the Chief Deputy, jail bookings, would that include DOC? That's total jail bookings, not just new ones, if you know. Is there a way to parse that out, Brent?
Well, there is a way to parse it out, but I don't know what particular numbers that Phil was given, so.
Okay.
I just asked, part of it is how I just asked for a very general number. So if we can, I can work with the jail captain and parse that out.
Other questions or other comment? That was really useful, at least, I think, to those of us that are in the system, but hopefully to others on this body who I think don't always understand the enormity as well as this funneling, as Mr. Witt described as well, that from total number of bookings or arrests, what we end up with for adjudications, or in this case, prison sentences, which, again, St. Croix, I think, is certainly a different demographic than Milwaukee County in terms of how they process similar cases, and I think you'll find that in any county in the state. Part of the reason the legislature went to mandatory prison for 5th and 6th, because Milwaukee was sending everyone on a 5th and 6th to prison, whereas St. Croix was looking at alternatives and keeping people in the community and providing programming. So there's a number of dynamics that go into both philosophically as well as what the climate is of your county and what the expectations of the community are. So thank you. I think we're now down to subcommittee reports. Executive committee meeting, next one is on February 23. Anyone is welcome to attend those and provide input or suggestions to us. Criminal Justice, Judge Waterman.
Criminal Justice Subcommittee continues to work with Justice Services regarding pretrial supervision and monitoring. It's largely down to management of fine details of how we interact with the district attorney, with the courts, with public defender. So that's a monthly project that we're working on. The other project we have is the examination of the numbers. I believe it was Supervisor Fiedler suggested that we take a look at some data and see what the data looks like and then work from there. So now we've got a preliminary map, and I'm sure we'll take this back to committee and figure out what we need to do. But if others have suggestions for topics for the Justice or Criminal Justice Subcommittee, please let Judge Needham, Dr. Ghali, or me know so that we can address it and add it to our agenda.
Any questions of Judge Waterman? Hearing none. Treatment court. Kate, is there anything else additional that you would like to share?
We are still working on our policy and procedure update. Our defense counsel is working on that, and we should have an update at our next committee, and just working on multiple resources to partnership with.
Any questions? Domestic violence, Judge Flack is not here. Maybe Phil, you can fill in.
Sure. The only add is that our next meeting is the 25th. So not next week, but the following Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday the 25th at 11:30 right here in this room.
And then finally, behavioral health. Bob.
Thank you, Judge. The Behavioral Health Subcommittee met in November, I believe, for the last meeting where we discussed where updates were provided on the ARPA positions with some data, summary of where things stand with those ARPA positions. As I mentioned, we hired another co-responder to fill that vacancy. That requires some period of training before they'll be actively helping in that area. We also discussed the National Judicial Task Force for State Courts' Response to Mental Health, I believe is the title of it. There was a list of final recommendations, a summary report that came out from that, those regional summits that were held. Chief Young and myself attended the one in Vermont last year. We discussed that, and then the idea of developing a work group from the Behavioral Health Subcommittee that would design a white paper really targeting many of the things that were discussed today. Addressing intervention strategies for that population with behavioral health concerns that enters the judicial system or the criminal justice system, and who also cycle through jails and emergency departments and other crisis services. So looking at how do we intervene earlier as a system, what kinds of diversion and other strategies can we implement that would prevent these folks not only from going to jail maybe, but also assist them in getting the help they need, the health care they need to address their behavioral health needs so that they're not repeatedly cycling through our system. As Ken pointed out, it's very expensive and the outcomes are not very good for those folks, that small percentage of high utilizers of emergency services and EDs. So we are in the process right now. Phil and I and Ellie from Public Health met yesterday to talk a little bit about data collection for the white paper and data sources that we could use to better identify the population we're talking about. And then we have this work group that will meet just prior to the next Behavioral Health Subcommittee on the 23rd, where we'll start to discuss strategies around this. We're using the National Judicial Task Force recommendations as a guide, but there will be a state-focused summit in April, I believe, where the judges will receive a save the date relatively soon with the agenda and what that consists of. So I'll be trying to put together, we'll be trying to put together a small team of individuals to go to that state summit. They recommend judges, they recommend Health and Human Services, law enforcement, so possibly Chief Young, who's already been involved in this. And we can decide amongst us 3 to 5 people that might want to go to this. But the idea, again, would be to develop a system within St. Croix County that better addresses the behavioral health needs of people that enter the criminal justice system and or who cycle through emergency departments and other crisis services so that we can intervene earlier and have better outcomes and figure out a way to develop policy recommendations for the state that would help support these things going forward.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Raritt? That completes a formal agenda. Again, if anyone has ideas for future agenda items, never hesitate to offer those to anyone on the executive committee. We always entertain, as I said, ideas that any of you may have. I'm not aware of any announcements or correspondence, but I will share that I think, well, I know, but in December we graduated another 10-plus CASA volunteers who I was privileged to swear in with Judge Waterman, Judge Norson, and Judge Flack. So I think my understanding, based on conversation with Judge Waterman, is that we're pretty much at capacity for having a single person who's supervising Mr. Kinsella and the number of CASA volunteers that he can manage under his current responsibility. So that's great news. I can also share that the reports we're getting from the CASA advocates in our child protection cases are incredibly useful and have provided insight where we've not had it before. And that's, again, not a comment about the work of others, but simply a new resource that we're tapping and we're using to hopefully help kids and help kids get back with their families and to avoid, again, these out-of-home placements, which, again, I think at this point are in excess of 100 in St. Croix County. So we're pleased to have those new folks on board and getting them cases assigned and seeing the results of their work and advocacy on behalf of kids in this county. Any other announcements or correspondence? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you. Next meeting is March 9th, 8 o'clock this room, and the next executive committee meeting, as I said, is February 23.